Chapter 5. The Fires of Hope. Sullust, 4 BY. 2 days after the Battle of Endor, Luke Skywalker shifted uncomfortably in his seat, chafing at the formal wear he had reluctantly adopted in anticipation of Mon Mothma's address. He leaned forward, glancing down the aisle at Han, equally uncomfortable, bouncing his leg in agitation as he glowered amidst dignitaries and politicians. Han sensed Luke glancing at him, and he turned his head toward Luke. Luke raised his eyebrows, and Han rolled his eyes. Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca sat behind Han, with Chewie also on edge, and Lando appearing bored. Only Leia, who sat to Han's right, appeared comfortable in her formal gown and her hair done in elegant, elaborate braids. To soothe his discomfort, Luke turned his gaze to the craggy roof of the expansive cavern of Pinyum, the capital city of Sullust. Red lights blinked rhythmically from the stalactites descending from the cavern's roof, marking the travel lanes for the busy speeder traffic soaring through the upper reaches of the cavern. The city's elegant towers, apartments, and factories rose from the floor of the cavern into the gloom of the upper reaches. Luke observed that the Sullustans had built apartment complexes and apartments into massive columns and even the walls of the cavern. Artificial lights high above illuminated much of the city from within and without. Impressive though the city was, its subterranean nature left Luke with a claustrophobic feeling that exacerbated his unease at the formality of the moment. He turned his gaze away from the ceiling and scanned the crowd, which filled a large amphitheater open to the cavern above. Luke recognized a scant few familiar faces such as Admiral Akbar, General Madine, and a few of the rebel soldiers who survived the ground assault on the Forest Moon. Leia had explained that officials, leaders, and ex-imperial senators had already caught wind of the Emperor's death and were here to witness the speech, the first of the restored Republic. Another wave of anxiety separate from his discomfort and his claustrophobia settled on him as he realized that many of the unfamiliar faces in the audience regarded him with an eager curiosity. Leia had warned him, but even with the warning, Luke felt compelled to disappear. To Luke's relief, a fanfare blew, and those seated around him rose from their chairs. Luke hesitated, then stood up belatedly with a tinge of embarrassment over his slow adoption of protocol. A Sullustan in regal, elaborate robes walked to the podium and paused for the applause from the audience to die down. As the audience settled back into its seats, the Sullustan launched into a rapid torrent of Sullustan, and Luke held the portable translator to his ear, listening as 3PO's voice translated the speech into Basic. Greetings, dignitaries from across the galaxy, leaders of the Rebel Alliance and distinguished guests. We gather here today at Pinyum, the heart of Sullust, to celebrate the triumph at Endor. The Emperor is dead, Darth Vader is dead. The Death Star has been destroyed, and the Imperial fleet has been routed. A massive roar echoed through the cavern as the audience celebrated the declaration. Much hard work awaits our growing alliance. The Empire remains strong. Many hardships await us, but so does triumph. And as the reborn Republic takes its first steps, it is my privilege and honor to welcome the leader of the Alliance to restore the Republic, Senator Mon Mothma. A second roar erupted from the crowd, and those surrounding Luke stood. Luke was quicker to stand this time, spurred by his respect for the leader of the Rebel Alliance. Mon Mothma glided to the podium from the side of the stage, dressed in a flowing white gown. Her face was somber, but as the applause sustained itself, she allowed herself a tight smile as she walked briskly toward the podium. The effect of the smile made her look 20 years younger, and for a moment, Luke felt a sense of relief for a woman who had denied herself comfort and peace after fighting the Empire for more than a decade. Mon Mothma stepped to the podium, beaming at the audience as the applause sustained for minutes. Lights from the towers of Pinyum illuminated in the form of the rebel phoenix, and fireworks exploded near the eaves of the cavern. Mon Mothma's smile persisted as she waved at the audience, waiting for her moment to speak. "Thank you," she said graciously as the applause continued. She waited another minute before the applause subsided. She repeated, "Thank you," as the applause finally began to tail off. With the applause tapering, she began her speech. "Thank you, President Anib Nay, for the gracious introduction." Another wave of applause emerged, and Mon Mothma allowed it to rise, crest, and fall before continuing, and welcome guests, friends, and dignitaries from across the galaxy. First, I wish to thank the heroes of the Battle of Endor, whose sacrifices have brought us here today. The next wave of applause was so robust, it shook the ground. Mon Mothma waited for the jubilation to die down before saying, "I wish to recognize those responsible for this victory. To Admiral Jial Akbar, for orchestrating the assault on the Death Star, whose courage and ingenuity helped pave the way to victory." Applause followed, and Mon Mothma paused to allow the applause to subside. To General Crix Madine, who organized and planned the assault on the Forest Moon. To General Lando Calrissian, for leading the assault on the Death Star's main reactor. To General Han Solo, for leading the assault on the Forest Moon's shield generator. To Leia Organa, for rallying aid from our indigenous allies on the Forest Moon. And finally, to the Jedi Luke Skywalker, for confronting Darth Vader and the Emperor, defeating both and destroying the corrupt heart of Imperial power. Applause had followed each of Mon Mothma's references, but the roar that followed Luke Skywalker's mention was the loudest yet. The applause sustained and grew, and Leia leaned over, mouthing "stand and wave." Luke stood, waving awkwardly to the crowd. Mon Mothma waited for the final wave of applause to recede, and as silence settled across the crowd, she allowed a moment of silence to convey the gravity of the moment. My friends, while we celebrate these heroes of the Battle of Endor, let us also recognize with a moment of silence the sacrifices of the thousands of Sullustans, Bothans, Mon Calamari, Ewoks, humans, and species, hailing from every corner of the galaxy, who gave their lives to ignite the fires of hope. The crowd fell silent, with only the distant thrum of speeder traffic reverberating within the cavern. Luke closed his eyes, allowing his senses to expand through the cavern. Grief, sadness, and anguish washed over him. Many of the beings in the audience had fought in the battle. Nearly all had lost somebody close to them. As the collective grief washed over Luke, carried on the currents of the Force, he thought of his father, dying on the floor, of a Death Star hangar bay, his face bearing a weak smile as he recovered his true self in the seconds before his passing. "The Emperor is dead," Mon Mothma declared, allowing the gravity of the statement to settle on the crowd. "Darth Vader is dead. The greatest part of the Imperial fleet is ashes. Yet, the might of the Empire remains great. Even without the Emperor's power and cruelty, difficult challenges lay ahead. Even as we celebrate, we must look to the future, a future where domination, torture, despair, and tyranny become distant memories. A future where democracy thrives, tended to by careful hands and eyes gazing ever to tomorrow. A future where our children may grow up safe and secure, knowing nothing of the ravages of war, ravages which the people of this galaxy have suffered for nearly 25 years. As we convene here on Sullust, sharing our grief and our triumph, let our first action be to declare that the Republic, once the bastion of democracy, freedom, and liberty in the galaxy, has arisen again, reborn from the ashes of the Emperor's funeral pyre. Let us recall the words of the Republic's Constitution, drafted over 1,000 years ago, by our ancestors, who look on us with hope and expectation that we may rise to its ideals. We, the free beings of the Galactic Republic, united in conviction and purpose, declaring it the responsibility of this body to ensure prosperity, peace, liberty, and equality. Do hereby convey the terms of our democratic system in service of the people. Those words once again dictate the purpose of our government, the aim of which will be to restore freedom and heal the galaxy. All planets seeking respite from the yoke of imperial tyranny are to be welcomed. Back with open arms, restitution and reparation shall follow. And we shall begin with the first election in 25 years, with the confirmation to be held on the planet Chandrila in 3 months' time. The announcement of a new election sent a ripple of excitement through the crowd, followed by a standing ovation that lingered for over a minute. Mon Mothma nodded somberly to all quadrants of the amphitheater, and Luke had a sense of her awesome responsibility. He felt an echo of that responsibility, which deepened his empathy toward her. "When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be. Luke, the Force runs strong in your family. Pass on what you have learned." As the memory of Yoda's last words before vanishing trailed away, Luke's mind shifted to Obi-Wan, saying, "I took it upon myself to train him as a Jedi. I thought that I could instruct him just as well as Yoda. I was wrong." Luke turned to Leia and regarded her as tears streamed down her cheeks. She became aware of his gaze, and she turned toward him. His apprehension lingered as he recalled Yoda's implication that his sister would be the first of the new Jedi, and that her training was now in his hands. A slight frown creased Leia's forehead as she studied her brother's expression. Luke turned his attention back to Mon Mothma's speech and listened as she concluded. "Tonight, let us celebrate this turning point in galactic affairs. Let us mourn our dead and celebrate their sacrifice. Tomorrow, we regroup. We press our advantage against the forces of darkness. We do not stop until democracy, freedom, and equality are restored for all beings. May the Force be with us all." The crowd's final applause shook the floor, and Luke stood, joining those around him, united in joy and sorrow. As Luke watched Mon Mothma gazing across the audience, he noticed her turn her gaze toward him. Her gaze met his, and she held it for a long moment. She nodded respectfully, then turned from the podium and left the stage. "Some speech, eh?" Lando Calrissian chuckled as he settled into a chair in the lounge behind the stage. Han had already settled into his own chair, and he swirled a tumbler of Chandrilan's spiced ale, his legs crossed and his arms spread wide. He loosened the collar around his neck, stretching his head side to side as he said, "And now that it's over, I can breathe again." Chewie grunted something derisive, and Han retorted, "Yeah, but I don't have enough body hair to pull that off, you great furry oaf." Leia chuckled, settling herself on the arm of Han's chair, leaning toward Han and draping her arm around his shoulder. "I think we're all grateful for that." She smiled radiantly toward Luke, who returned her smile with strained, affected good nature, masking a lingering anxiety. A slight frown creased her forehead again, but Han did not give her a chance to investigate. "Why do you say, kid?" Han said, raising his glass. "Personally, I'd rather have Corellian whiskey, but this Chandrilan stuff ain't bad." "Heh," Lando grunted sardonically. "After all this time, you're still drinking that bantha piss." "Take it easy," Han warned playfully. "You owe me at least a crate of that bantha piss after what you did to the Falcon." "What I did?" Lando shot back, feigning hurt and indignation. Luke laughed for real this time as he pieced together Chewie's comment about Corellian whiskey's effectiveness at cleaning hyperdrive motivators. "Well," Han said to Luke, grinning broadly, "thanks, but I'll stick to bantha milk." Luke smiled. "Now, is that Jedi prudery or Tatooine backwater yokel talking?" Han teased. "Han," Leia scolded, backhanding his shoulder playfully. "And take it easy with the ale, unless you want me to have 3PO follow you around with a bucket all night." Leia straightened up as Mon Mothma approached, an aide trailing her. She paused before Leia, nodding to each in turn. "General Solo, General Calrissian, Chewbacca, Senator, your speech was as eloquent as ever," Lando said smoothly, and Mon Mothma cocked an eyebrow at his roguish smile. "Thank you, General," Mon Mothma replied graciously. She then turned to Luke, saying, "Luke, I wonder if you might spare a moment of your time." Leia raised her eyebrows at Luke. Luke nodded silently to Mon Mothma, swallowing a small lump in his throat. Mon Mothma drifted away, and Luke chanced a glance at Leia. She frowned again, still leaning against Han as she searched his expression. He forced a smile, then turned to follow Mon Mothma. Moments later, they reached a veranda overlooking the wealthier residences of Pinyam. Mon glanced around to ensure they would not be overheard. Luke stopped before her, and when Mon Mothma was certain that they were alone, she said, "I apologize for pulling you away from your celebration." "That's all right," Luke assured. "Admiral Akbar has reported an Imperial fleet massing near Chandrila, and there's word of an uprising underway. It is my hope that we can aid the Chandrilans in overthrowing the Imperial governor." "I depart tomorrow," Mon explained. "What can we do to help?" Luke asked. His voice sounded hesitant to his ears, and he felt Mon's sense of unease through the Force. She hesitated before replying, "In 3 days, I will notify you of progress on Chandrila, at which point I request that you join me." "Why me?" Luke asked. "Well, Mon Mothma sighed, steeling herself. Word of your deeds has traveled far and wide. You have inspired the galaxy with your bravery and daring. Ah, Luke said uncertainly. Mon Mothma paused, and Luke recognized the pained look on her face. I am sorry to ask you this, but given your stature following your actions on Endor Yavin and through dozens of other exploits, and given who your father was, you think that my presence will help sway the public against the Empire, Luke said flatly. I do, Mon replied. Luke turned toward the view of Pinyam and did not respond immediately. Luke, I am aware that I am asking a lot of you. The recent events have undoubtedly been an ordeal. You of all people have earned a reprieve, and I am sorry to ask so much of you so soon, Mon replied. Yeah, Luke said, then recognizing that he sounded ungracious, corrected himself. I mean, thank you. I guess it's just, well, my father, Luke trailed off. Your father died defending younglings at the Jedi Temple. Even as the lore of the Jedi fades and tarnishes, the name Anakin Skywalker still stirs reverence, Mon Mothma stated admiringly. It would seem that you are cut from the same mold, she added, smiling with great respect. Luke began, but another woman's voice cut him off. Just say thank you, Luke, Leia said, smiling warmly. Luke turned to her, and a quick flash of her eyes warned him not to say more than that. Thank you, Luke said to Mon Mothma. He straightened up and said, Yes, of course, I will do what I can to help. However, I must tell you, soon I must turn my efforts to the training of new Jedi. When the time comes, I will need to devote my full attention to this endeavor. Luke said the last words while looking directly at Leia. Mon Mothma glanced between the two of them, frowning. Leia smiled again, saying, Should we tell her? Luke's breath caught in his throat, but he heard her voice in his mind, saying, Not about Vader. We're siblings. Luke said uncertainly. He thought to Leia, I guess. She nodded, then turned to an increasingly perplexed Mon Mothma and said, Mon, we only learned this a few days ago, and we would both appreciate if you kept this a secret for now until we've had a chance to discuss it more thoroughly. Of course, Mon concurred. Her curiosity piqued. Luke and I, well, we're twins, Leia said. Mon Mothma's eyes went wide in surprise, and she glanced back and forth at them in stunned silence. That's right. Our father was Anakin Skywalker. Our mother was Senator Amidala, Leia explained. Padme, Mon asked, astonished. You knew her, didn't you? Leia asked. Knew her? She and your father were my mentors before she passed, Mon said, as genuine joy stirred beneath her practiced regality. She paused, still processing the revelation as her surprise subsided. This is wonderful news. How did you find out? The Jedi separated us at birth to protect us from the Emperor, Luke explained, his voice quiet and somber. Mon regarded him as she spoke, and a frown dented her delight. They chose for Leia to remain anonymous. I am astonished, Mon exclaimed, and she regarded the twins with wonder and curiosity. Mon, Leia said, placing her hand upon her mentor's arm. I wonder if I could have a word with my brother. Yes, of course, Mon said. She nodded to Luke and said, Please rest and recuperate. In 3 days, please meet me at Chandrila. Mon paused, looking at Leia to say, In fact, Leia, I would also welcome your presence. At your service, Leia said warmly. Mon Mothma smiled at both and nodded, then glided back to the reception. Luke and Leia watched her leave, each remaining silent. Wordlessly, they turned toward the view of the city, leaning against the balcony as they considered the scene in silence. After minutes passed, Leia broke the silence. What is it? Our father, Luke explained. Your father, Leia countered, a sharp edge to her voice. But now that people know we're siblings, Luke pleaded. I want nothing to do with him, Leia snapped. At the end, Darth Vader was gone, Luke appeased. I don't care, Leia declared. Luke opened his mouth, then closed it, fearing that he would further upset her. I don't know how long I can live with that secret, Leia, Luke admitted. Then maybe you should take a page out of Obi-Wan's book, Leia replied. Do you have any idea how it felt to learn the truth? Luke asked. Yes, I do, Leia countered. She glared at him, and Luke felt her anger seething. It's like he said, right? Darth Vader betrayed and murdered our father. That's all it ever needs to be. There were others who knew, Luke countered. And they'll soon be dead, Leia retorted. But how can we be sure? Luke asked. Leia became quiet, gazing across the city. She closed her eyes and placed her hand on his hand. I'm sorry, Luke. I can't imagine what you went through, just as I know you can't imagine what it was like to watch my planet die. I get that you don't want to carry this secret, but if you are going to carry it for me. Please. Luke saw the pleading in her eyes. He sensed the conflict within her, and he knew that while he had fully forgiven their father in light of his sacrifice, it would be a long road for Leia to reach the same conclusion. He knew that forcing it would produce resistance and strain, and he recognized that while the truth would one day have to emerge, it was only right to allow Leia to share the decision. Okay, Luke said, exhaling. Leia leaned in, placing her arm around him and squeezing. She leaned her head against his shoulder, and together they gazed across the city. After minutes of being lost in the scene, Luke said, Padme Amidala, why didn't you tell me? I only just found out, Leia admitted. How? Luke asked. I knew Obi-Wan long before you did, Luke, Leia explained, squeezing him tighter. Luke paused, his mind a sifting quicksand of wonder and anxiety. As the dueling emotions danced and shifted, he asked, Why did you tell Mon Mothma just now? Leia relaxed her grip and straightened up. As she turned toward him, Luke had a sense of her seriousness supplanting her warmth. Luke, right now the Alliance is held together by little more than hope. If I know Mon Mothma, it won't be long before this becomes the narrative. The narrative? Luke asked in alarm. That the children of Anakin Skywalker, hero of the Clone Wars, have defeated the Emperor, avenging and restoring the Republic. That's the idea, Leia affirmed somberly. That's a lie, Luke retorted, affronted. A lie that could hold the Republic together, at least until the Empire is truly defeated, Leia explained cautiously. Or could tear the whole thing apart, Luke countered. You've got a lot to learn about politics, Leia replied, fondness and a hint of patronization in her tone. Spoken like the daughter of Padme Amidala, spoke a refined, echoing voice from behind them. Luke and Leia turned, and both felt a thrill of recognition as Obi-Wan Kenobi's ghost stood before them, smiling proudly. Ben, Leia exclaimed. Princess, Obi-Wan said warmly. Obi-Wan. Luke smiled. He had seen Obi-Wan on Endor before speaking with his father. He looked forward to unpacking the ordeal on the Death Star, but not at a party surrounded by dignitaries and politicians. I apologize for interrupting the celebration, Obi-Wan said, stepping forward. But I have just felt a tremor in the Force. A great thing has happened. What is it? Luke asked, excited and apprehensive at the same time. A good friend, a great warrior, Obi-Wan explained reverently. One who has returned from a long absence. She will need you. Who? Leia asked. Where? Luke concurred. I must implore you to travel to Malachor at once, Obi-Wan said gravely. Malachor? Luke asked, astonished. Yes, Obi-Wan said, and as his ghost began to fade, he added, Bring my good tidings with you, before he vanished altogether.